All right, so if you fell for the clickbait, this is not leaked data, but it is actual real data. The data that I'm about to show you contains 8,017 sampling points. It is from the most recent week leading up to the Planes of Power expansion. We should have some insight on what people are doing and how they're preparing for the Planes of Power expansion. This data is not going to tell you what classes were popular in Classic, Kunark, Velius, or Luckland. This is simply going to tell you what is happening the week before the Planes of Power expansion is released, and hopefully that you see this video before the expansion comes out so you can hurry up and figure out if you need to be doing the same. So the first thing we're going to cover is the most picked first class. That is the class that everyone chooses to start with. So before we jump into this, I just want to point out that the admins have said that they are not going to release server data. They're not going to release data like this. This is unofficial data. However, it is based off real samplings. This is not a best guess estimate on the most classes played. This is not a forum consensus. This is based off actual data from the Hero's Journey server in the last week. So the first chart we're going to look at is the most picked first class. That is the class that people choose when they start on the Hero's Journey. Coming in first place is the Warrior at 12%, followed by the Shadow Knight at 11.3%, and the Magician at 7.3%. That means these three classes make up the first 30% of all characters selected as first pick. Coming in slightly below the Magician is the Rogue, also at 7.3, Paladin 6.8, Bard 6.5, Necromancer 6.1, Ranger 5.8, Cleric 5.7, Beastlord 5.7, Shaman 5.1, Monk 5.1, Wizard 4.3, Enchanter 4.0, Berserker 3.7, Druid 3.3. This does not necessarily mean these classes stay in that order, but you can kind of make the assumption that if someone is first picking a class, that they plan on keeping that class, and the other two classes are the ones that they may swap out. So I would think of this as the primary class. So on my last video, someone had made the suggestion that it was likely only the top 5% of the elite are soloing raid content. But I think in reality, the actual number of people that are soloing is probably 50% or more. That's something that the admins would have access to. They would have to make it by accounts that have a level 60 and have sold the content by themselves or the zone. The number might come in theoretically low because a lot of people make ults and have 60s that don't necessarily kill. So we cannot go by character. We'd have to go by account. And with the amount of new players trying to catch up, I feel like everybody has a chance to solo the raid bosses. I don't think that it's necessarily an elite group of players that are doing it. I think it really is coming down to some of these class combinations that would enable anybody, literally anybody that puts the time in to do this. While it may be a pipe dream in most other games that only the elite are doing all these fancy things, I think on this server in general, most of the people will be able to solo the raid content, at least as far as up to Luckland. It is not reserved for the skilled or special players. And they said this comment in defense of the developers gearing this server for raid content being duo and trying to avoid people being able to solo it, where group content was soloable. They were trying to defend that position, saying only the top 5% of players are soloing the raid content, and I believe that is largely false. So the next thing we'll move into is the most picked starter combos. This is after people have selected their other two classes, which ones appear the most. And as you guessed, Necromancer, Magician, Beastlord at 7.31% in first, followed by Shadow Knight, Bard, Wizard, which also tied with Shadow Knight, Rogue, Shaman, and then Bard, Magician, Beastlord, Warrior, Cleric, Beastlord, and Paladin, Monk, Berserker. These are the top 6 classes people are starting with, not to be confused with finishing with. So if you add those 6 up, and I want you to keep this number in mind throughout this entire video, there are 560 possible combinations in the Hero's Journey from what I've heard. These 6 classes alone make up 24.55% of all classes started. That means these 6 out of 560 are a quarter of all the class combos played. If that does not scream imbalance, and there's a lot of work to do on balancing this game out before they continue to release expansions, and maybe they did some class combo tuning in the Planes of Power, getting rid of some of the pet stuff, but a lot has to be done with the classes here to balance the game. And I personally feel like they probably should have slowed down the expansion release. While it is cool to jump into all these expansions, explore these zones with the power of the Hero's Journey and this multi-class combination, it is really unbalanced right now. And I would like to say it's just the pet classes, but it's not. You can see Shadow Knight Bard Wizard and Shadow Knight Rogue Shaman are making up almost 9%. And again, this is the most recent data within this last week. So this is not all time. It's not just the pet combinations that are unbalanced when you have 6 classes making up a quarter of the game to start out with. Out of 560 combinations, that's a serious problem. I didn't personally like the TLPs because I felt like they moved too fast. So there's not a lot of time to dick around. And we'll get into quality of life and balancing a little bit later in this video. But moving on, here in this chart in the last week, we have alt combos that have reached at least level 50. This is very important because this means that these players have already unlocked expansions. They already have a level 60 most likely. And these are the classes that they are choosing to play or level up right now, a week before the Planes of Power launch. This of all charts I'm about to show you is probably the most important. As you can see, people still making Necromancer, Magicians, and Beast Lords. With the upcoming pet nerf, I'm not sure why. Maybe they plan to swap one of those classes out or something, but that is still almost 1 in 10 alts are Necromancer, Magician, Beast Lord. And then we have again followed by Shadow Knight Bard Wizard at 7.28, Bard Magician, Beast Lord, Shadow Knight Rogue Shaman, Paladin Monk Berserker, Cleric Ranger Bard, Paladin Ranger Rogue, Ranger Shadow Knight Rogue, Cleric Bard Enchanter, and Cleric Monk Berserker. So we do see some people introducing or getting those healers into the group as part of the most popular combinations that are being leveled up by people that already have mains and are making alts. The combination of these top 10 classes is still a whopping 42%. 10 classes that people with mains that have already been playing the game are leveling up. 10 classes are 42% of combinations out of 560 combinations. Once again, there are combination balance issues. Now, I'm not saying that all combinations are viable. Maybe only a quarter of combinations should be viable because I imagine that there would be some buff bots and other things going on. That's still, what, 140 combinations? So let's pretend that only a quarter are viable. We still have 10 of 140 viable combinations are still 42% these 10 classes. And you can see Necromancer, Magician, and Beast Lord followed by Shadow Knight Bard Wizard make up over 16% of that. So whatever is happening in Planes of Power, these veteran players obviously are not concerned. These veteran players are still banking on these class combinations being valid into the Planes of Power. The final chart I'm going to show you are the class combinations that have reached level 60, the top 5, which make up over a third of the valid 140 combinations or viable 140 combinations, and maybe there's less. There could be significantly less viable combinations, but let's face it, having only 5 combinations at level 60 make up over 30% of the played combos is still a serious balance issue. Love the game, love the idea, love the work these guys are doing, but there are class combination balance issues that need to be addressed beyond pets. However, 9.47, again, Necromancer, Magician, Beast Lord, followed by Shadow Knight, Bard, Wizard, Bard, Magician, Beast Lord, Shadow Knight, Rogue, Shaman, and Paladin, Monk, Berserker have gone from 50 to 60. So if you notice, this is the exact same order that veteran players have made for alts, now have reached level 60, slightly different percentages. Some might not be there yet, could have been outside or before the data points I collected. Like I said, I only have 8,017 samples to choose from. My personal opinion on the matter is that they push the expansions way too fast. I am not a fan of the TLP unlocks. The time you spend like raiding and having time to dick around as a casual player, you're really only catering to people that have a lot of time to play. I've been playing for over a month now, and I really feel like I haven't gotten to explore. I wish I would have started earlier. I have no idea what they're going to do at Planes of Power. They can stop at Planes of Power, but we're going to lose out on, I didn't get to experience Classic, Kunark, Avilius, really in the way that it was originally designed or intended. Once you start hitting Planes of Power, it's like all that other content is really irrelevant, except, and this is another error I believe that is being made, and I talked about in my last video. Because of the 14-hour lockouts and the rarity of augmentations, the developers have maybe inadvertently created one of the most hated things that existed in World of Warcraft, dailies. They created dailies. Now it is a daily task to hop on and farm Kara, a daily task to hop on and try Saru, because the augs don't drop enough. And now the legendary augs are going to be no drop, so a lot of people won't even be able to buy them. Makes the situation even worse. As I said in my last video, these augs got to be legendary almost every time they drop. They got to drop in multiples. They got to have more chances. Something has to be done so that this is not a daily quest. I heard in an interview that the 14-hour lockout timers, they didn't want to make less because they would feel compelled to play as a lockout came up, and that's exactly what is happening. I would not be offended if the lockout timer was 3 days or more, and they significantly slowed down the expansion release. It's really cool to see all the fights, but we're seeing it in such a non-balanced, overly powerful way where they have ignored a lot of quality of life changes. Now, don't get me wrong, they fixed traveling and a bunch of other stuff, but I think more time should have been spent on quality of life, and daily quests should not really exist in this version of the game. I would feel someone like me that works a full day and only has a few hours to play, the dailies would eat up the time I have able to play, which means I don't get to fuck around and find out other areas. It's literally Suru, Kara, and then when I have time, Amp, and I'm just farming stuff instead of experiencing more of the game. We've already talked about how it was a massive fail if it was indeed, which I think has been confirmed through some of the comments left in my last video, that the developers wanted this to be group soloable and a raid duo. That was an extreme failure. I think that if they were to release that data, a significant portion of players with level 60s, not counting alts, not characters, accounts, people with level 60 accounts, a significant portion of those would have beat a lot of raid bosses, far more than the 5% that someone suggested in one of the comments on my videos. So one of the things that EverQuest did, which I really hated is, and World of Warcraft did this too, is every time an expansion released, it invalidated such a large set of items. So like in World of Warcraft, for example, Wrath of Lich King comes out, you have greens that are better than legendary items, besides effects and other special things right away. So you equip some greens, it's like right up on par with that. And it never should have been done like that. EverQuest was better because they did lower level incrementation, so you still could back farm an expansion to get some of the items. But now with boosted stats where things are doubling, it makes that gap a little too large. So a lot of items that you noticed in like Vilius and then now Lucklin when Planespark comes out, there's gonna be no reason to farm them except for the daily augs. One thing that I thought should have been done as the next expansion comes out, the stats on all the items from the previous expansion should have just been boosted across the board. Maybe, if Planes of Power items are generally speaking 25% better than Lucklin as far as stats, just give Lucklin a 15-20% boost on all stats. Go back to Vilius and boost them up to Lucklin. It would be really cool, and I think they have the ability to do that, if all items could still be farmed and have some type of relevance in the game. Speaking of quality of life, where the hell is my retrieve all button for parcels? Who dropped the ball on that one? Are these buttons really that hard? I mean, you guys have done amazing things. Are those buttons really that hard to put in? Is a retrieve all function that hard to put in? Is a train all button for A that hard to put in? Maybe it is. I'm not a coder, but it seems like with the stuff you've accomplished, that'd be something easy for you to do. So I want to now talk about briefly quality of life. Someone said my last video was just all quality of life changes. And here's the reality of it. Quality of life is almost everything. You can have a great game, but if you don't have the quality of life and people expect, like look at some of these statistics. Here's where quality of life frustrations actually like play into the game. 50 to 60% of players that quit an MMO have quality of life related frustrations at least contributing to their decision. 20 to 30% of players quit primarily because quality of life issues, which could be poor UI, slow leveling, which doesn't exist here, tedious grinds, which doesn't exist except for the daily aug that you have to do, excessive downtime, and inventory clutter. Things like flooded bazaar markets where there's just so much great gear on the market that a lot of people can't even get rid of things. They're just mass selling. So the marketplace is actually flooded with a lot of good gear that nobody can sell. Things like traveling, which they've fixed. I think travel is great. Performance issues, which they're fixing. The poor economy, I don't know how they're going to fix that. There's a lot of those type of things. So like everything that I talk about in my videos where it seems like quality of life, just remember that it is a major decision in whether 50 to 60% of players stop playing an MMO. It is the game. So you can like rush ahead and get this content out. But if you have these little nuances, whether it's randomly porting to the bazaar, it's really detrimental to get people to keep playing. And this might be like the cool wow factor right now. But what happens when you can't like push forward and keep releasing content so fast? What happens when you take this step back and now you got the solo hard modes, whatever, coming out? There's no new content to chase. They're stuck grinding augmentations, and I don't know what the decision behind that was. But then you have all these quality of life issues. That's literally people are going to get bored and leave the game. It's one of those things that builds up and causes people to quit. If you watch this, it may sound like I'm whining, but I'm being serious in a way. Like, yeah, they're petty, and yeah, we all love the game and we'll kind of deal with it because it's awesome that we can play EverQuest in this fashion. And this is something that Daybreak should have done a long time ago. But if these quality of life issues aren't fixed, we're not going to get new players. you're not going to get longevity. It's going to hurt the server in the long run. Like I said, it's great to have all these expansions. I feel like they're being rushed too fast. I feel like there's a lot of things in the game, like the dailies, that really need to be rethought. But quality of life, people look at that and say, oh, that's just a minor thing. But when you have a bunch of minor things, it becomes a big thing. And like I said, 50 to 60% of players, that's part of the reason that they'll quit. And I guarantee you it's part of the reason that they'll quit playing here. So quality of life to me is having 3 hours to play this game, which I think is a significant amount, but then basically getting stuck having to do Saru and Kara because my characters are max level, not going to start over. And I want to, kind of max out and farm all the stuff I can get. And the last thing I want to do is spend an hour trying to sell in the bazaar because I'm poor and need money, whether I need to buy EOM or something else to class change or try something new. So the reason that I make this video is that there's a chance for this server to go long term. You can see that people are feeling compelled to do certain things because of lockouts and because of augmentations. You can see that people are basically getting forced into picking certain class combinations because they're the ones that work. So somebody's got to talk about it because I honestly, personally would like to see this server be like the server. And I want it to be successful. And so I'm going to whine away, if that's what you want to call it. And, some of you will share in the frustrations that I share, and some will be like, oh, that's petty. That's fine. It's more than fine to disagree with me. It's absolutely fine. You feel free to leave comments. You're not going to hurt my feelings. I'll actually have a discussion with you about some of these things. I will. Some of you have left comments and said, here's something I didn't know. You can control shift, left click an item out of inventory and it pulls up in Bazaar. That was really helpful to me. So any of the things I'm struggling with that you have solutions or workarounds, feel free to share it. People watching this video and reading the comments will see that. They might have the same problems I have and you're helping them out too. So if you're interested in seeing more content, check out my last video.